why the mainstream media is consistently encouraging us not to have children, not to get married, or at the very least to have sex with hundreds of men and pursue a career before even considering marriage. And by then we're well into our 30s and maybe there are no more good men around or no men that want to marry us because we're older. They're pitting men and women against one another with extreme fervor. And you have to answer these questions. Why are they doing that? The truth is, if you break down the family in turn, society is also going to be broken down. And there's this quote I really love that I read recently actually about tradition. And it's tradition is not the worship of ashes, it's the preservation of fire. We have these values for a reason. They're the very values that once made our country great, and we're just throwing them all away.
Hey friends, thank you so very much for tuning in. You know how much we appreciate you. You know, I say that almost every video. I certainly should say it every single video because you are the most generous, special, kind audience, I think, on all of YouTube. You know, my recent interview with author Wayne Jett, he sent me an email, I think 12 hours after I posted our interview, and he wrote this: Sean, your email came in around midnight, and this morning I've got literally hundreds of sales already in and more coming in with every email message. I checked, my entire inventory will be gone before the day is out. Guys, as I told you, Wayne only had 750 books left, and I really appreciate y'all supporting him and purchasing The Fruits of Graft to help Wayne out and to really provide an excellent book for friends and family. Well, I've got another one for you. It's called What Makes Us Girls, and it's from activist and author Brittany Pettibone. Britt, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's my absolute pleasure. This isn't a channel where we just constantly plug books, but it is a channel where I try to pay it forward with patriots and libertarians and truth tellers. I want to help people out. I want people in our space to be successful. And guess what, Britt? The folks at Washington Post and the folks at the New York Times and the folks at CNN and MSNBC want the opposite for us. They want to shut us all down and they want to shut us all up, don't they?
Absolutely. And kind of on that note, I actually received an email when I announced my pre-order from somebody who writes for Vice and also GQ, and they requested a review copy of my book. And I was thinking, well, if I even had a 1%, if I thought there was a 1% chance that you would give this an unbiased review, perhaps I would. But no, you're going to have to order it yourself. There's no way that I'm going to mail you a free copy.
Yeah, well, hopefully I will have done my expose, my video on the Washington Post and their recent hit piece on the Truth Media, which included down towards the bottom a hit piece, an attempted hit piece against me, SGT report. It didn't work because I wouldn't play ball with them either. But I do have the goods. I've got the information in black and white via email with this particular reporter. His name is Craig. Who misled me the whole way. I knew he was, and I've got it in black and white. So I don't know if I will have posted that video expose before this interview with you, but either way, it's coming soon, folks. These folks are duplicitous, and they do not care about truth. Brittany, I've said it so many times before, I literally don't know how they sleep at night because they've sold their souls to Big Brother and the New World Order agenda.
Absolutely. They'll approach you acting so kind and acting as if they're going to represent you fairly, just not implementing their own opinions into the article. So they'll treat you very kindly until the day for publication comes. And then it's like, wow, all along this was completely duplicitous. And they essentially what I've learned about the mainstream media is they already know what they want to publish before they even interview you or get a comment from you. And they have to somehow make your words fit their agenda. And that's just how it's been in the past couple of years that I've been involved in political activism. So I tend to just stay away from them, let them write what they want, but I'm not going to give them comments because it doesn't really help.
Yeah, we know that they're not on our team. They're not on team people. I mean, they literally aren't. They're on team New World Order. And, President Trump, it may sound trite when he calls them fake news, but it is the most honest label possible. They are literally fake news, and I think we're all sick and tired of it. And that's why this space is burgeoning. The alt media space is burgeoning and growing leaps and bounds because people are hungry for truth. I mean, look no further than what's happening in the EU with the French protesting in the street against the Rothschild puppet Macron, the open borders, the UN Migration Pact, all of it. People hate all of it. And you know what? Men and women are under attack, just like the borders are under attack. And I think it's really sort of powerful to think that the New World Order wants us to lay down our borders and kill our sovereignty. And they also want us to lay down our borders in terms of our sexuality, in terms of our genders. They don't want us to be men. They don't want us to be women. Girls are under attack, aren't they? Women are under attack. Femininity is under attack.
Absolutely. I initially, I'd had the idea to write this book for about a year, but I could just never make myself sit down and write it because in a way I didn't want to write it, particularly because I was like, why should it be me? Like, what do I have to say above other people? But then I came to realize that maybe it's something that I need to do. And right when I did force myself to sit down, I got it done so quickly. There was so much that I wanted to say. And I decided to write a book particularly for girls when it came to my attention how much many of my girlfriends are struggling in areas completely unrelated to politics, such as finding their purpose, dealing with peer pressure to conform, a perfectionism complex, the feeling of being isolated by mainstream society for being conservative, and so on. And being that I've received so much wisdom and good advice over the course of my life from my parents, I have a wonderful family, my teachers, mentors, friends, even some priests. I wanted to package it all into a book, possibly even two. And one other reason I wrote it is because I wanted to give something to girls that's not strictly political, because while some girls are obsessed with politics, I think the vast majority of girls don't like to read strictly political books. And I wanted to tap into that largely ignored yet very important demographic.
All right. So, of course, I want to ask you about how the globalists are literally trying to destroy reproduction and families. What are your thoughts on that from a woman's perspective? We always hear the people on the left talk about women's rights, women's rights. Well, you know what they're talking about is abortion on demand. I
Right.
think that alone is a really destructive concept to young girls growing up if they're going to be indoctrinated in public schools about your right to choose. Well, isn't it a woman's right to choose before she has sex? Those are some muddy waters, but those of us who are Christians feel really powerful about it, and we feel that our Christian values are under attack constantly.
Absolutely. They make us feel ashamed for having these principles. But on the other hand, in Islam, they have, some similar principles, some very extreme ones, but in a way, these aren't controversial to them. And it's like, why Christianity but not Islam? So that's a very interesting discussion there. But while some people might deny that this is an authentic goal of theirs, you would then have to answer the question why the mainstream media is consistently encouraging us not to have children, not to get married, or at the very least to have sex with hundreds of men and pursue a career before even considering marriage. And by then we're well into our 30s and maybe there are no more good men around, or no men that want to marry us because we're older. So you just see that they're pitting men and women against one another with extreme fervor. And you have to answer these questions. Why are they doing that? And the truth is, if you break down the family in turn, society is also going to be broken down. Without the protection and the nourishment of a strong, stable family, we're far more isolated, more vulnerable, gullible, and we become also far more reliant upon institutions such as the government. So you can see exactly what they're doing. They have all the evidence out there and everything that they're publishing all the time. And while they may deny it and accuse us of being conspiracy theorists, they then have to answer why they're constantly doing this. We can actually shove it in their face and ask them why, but then of course they'll avoid the question.
Well, it's so insidious and evil, their plan, because, we already know that in the West, people are not getting married at the rates we used to get married at, and we're not reproducing. We're not replacing our population by having children. And so these same people that have instituted these policies to really destroy families and to discourage men and women, young men and women, from getting married, then they come out and they say, well, we have to open our borders. See, we're right back to the borders. It's all part of the same bogus narrative. We have to open our borders and welcome in migrants to replace the population that you people aren't procreating. But it's completely bogus. They want to bring in these migrant, low education populations so that the Democrats have more voters.
Yes, absolutely. That's very clear. It's interesting if you look at voting patterns. For example, just in Turkey, it's something like between 85 and 95% of the people in Turkey, they vote for Erdogan, the very traditionalist, fundamentalist, Islamic government. But these same people, when they're in Austria, for example, I know this because my fiance is Austrian, I'm going to eventually move there. It's the same percentage, between 85 and 90% of these migrants coming from Turkey, they vote for the Socialist Green Party government. So they're voting for the policies that are going to let them in, even though they might not fundamentally agree with most of what these parties represent. So it's very interesting, and you can see it taking effect very quickly, and it's very scary.
Let me ask you about Me Too. What are your thoughts on the Me Too movement? And then we can talk about the Brett Kavanaugh hearings if you'd like, because evidently, according to Me Too, we're just supposed to believe any woman who accuses any man of sexual impropriety.
It's absolutely insane. I certainly think that maybe there's a slight chance that the Me Too movement started out with good intentions, at least with certain individual women, perhaps. But since that time, it's unfortunately devolved into a chaotic web of just essentially flimsy accusations against men. Like, for example, he touched my arm or he catcalled me, and that equates to rape. And not only is this absolutely crazy, but it does a massive disservice to women who have actually suffered through the trauma of real rape. And it's also, as you mentioned, created a culture in which men are tried in the court of public opinion, and women, they always have to be believed. And if they accuse men, then the man is automatically guilty. He could lose his reputation, perhaps his job. He might even serve jail time in some cases. So the brakes really need to be slammed on this crazy train, because gender relations were already incredibly damaged with the rise of feminism, but with this Me Too movement, which is largely driven by feminists, but it is kind of a new movement in itself, they're being even further damaged. And you can just see, I think back then they would attack more the family, because we had these communities, these stronger, stable families, and that is much more difficult to attack. Nowadays, they're going straight for the source. If you divide men and women, make them not want to get married, many men are just opting out of marriage, dating, having children in general, just because they think it's not worth it anymore. So if they attack them there, then they're never even going to create these strong, healthy families. So they're doing the work. They're starting just right from the foundation. And it's already, just in the past couple of years, had such a catastrophic consequences. And I see it all around me all the time, because I do have a lot of viewers who are younger, around this age, and I can just see the cynicism, and it's really disheartening. And that's another reason I wanted to write this book, actually.
It occurs to me as we're talking here that young girls growing up, if they don't have exposure, if they're not in a family with a strong mother, independent thinking mother, and hopefully a father, a nuclear family, it may be that a lot of young girls don't have good role models, especially if we look at what they're being fed, through movies and television. They're being indoctrinated to a certain way of thinking. And then when we take a look at the public schools, and we know that they've removed God and creationism and that discussion from the public schools, many of these girls without strong role models are like just rudderless crafts on an open ocean, just left to flip and flop and find their way. What is the importance of having a good role model? And by the way, when I say that, I consider you a good role model. Lauren Southern, so many others in the space on YouTube, strong, beautiful women like you guys are role models, but people have to seek you out to find you. What about the ones who can't find you?
Yeah, well, I'll just first comment on that. I mean, of course, it's a very flattering thing to say, but it makes me extremely insecure, because I know how imperfect I am, and I hope that nobody ever looks at me that way. Just realize, apply your own imperfections to me, and then that's a more realistic conception, I think. But absolutely, role models are extremely important, and whether we realize it or not, the vast majority of us have them. For example, I was always searching for them when I was younger, through my teens. I always wanted those role models. I ended up, of course, my mother's a wonderful, wonderful woman. She's definitely been my role model. I also ended up just developing them through reading classic literature, because I couldn't really find anyone out there. And for people who don't have them at home, in their local communities, in their families, at school, wherever, most of them end up adopting them out in the world, like famous people, for example. And well, most of these famous people who are heralded as so great by our current society, if you look at the messages they're promoting, it's mostly ones like degeneracy, drugs, partying, being irresponsible, shallow, caring about material things. They're always, singing about money, or the messages are completely inverted nowadays. And but these people, they're looked up to by millions of our youth. And when you look up to someone, you want to emulate them. And unfortunately, that's exactly what our youth are doing. So we really are in desperate need of good role models. I'm not saying, again, perfect people. No one's perfect. Everyone's going to have their imperfections. But at the very least, people who are spreading more wholesome messages, and at least trying to the best of their ability to live these messages by example. So just, for example, taking responsibility. Nobody encourages that anymore. In fact, women are largely encouraged just to be victims, say that they're victims, take no responsibility. It's all men's fault, the patriarchy. I'm just a victim here, and I never have to take any responsibility. Or working hard, respecting authority. Just look at the way people treat Trump. I'm not saying you have to like him, but there is a certain amount of respect you should place on the president of our country or our police. A lot of people don't respect our police. There's just no respect for authority anymore, or teachers even. So placing value on these things, family, again, loving your country, patriotism. Don't be like Macron, who's saying that patriotism and nationalism are conflicting with one another. That was the most horrible speech ever. I know it got a lot of backlash, but there are just so many things that we've lost that used to be, they're fundamental and extremely important to our country. And there's this quote I really love that I read recently, actually, about tradition. And it's, tradition is not the worship of ashes, it's the preservation of fire. We have these values for a reason, because they're the very values that once made our country great, and we're just throwing them all away. And that's why we're in this chaotic mess that we are.
Yeah, but I think we're winning the battle for hearts and minds. And the good news is, well, the Wicked Witch isn't in the White House. I mean, the biggest miracle of the past, probably of my lifetime, is the fact that President Trump is in the White House, and therefore we stand a chance. Our Constitution and Bill of Rights stands a chance, because if the witch had gotten in, we would be suffering the same exact policies that Merkel has rolled out in Germany and Macron, the Rothschild puppet, has rolled out in France, and it would be game over. But the good news is, I think we're winning the battle. Look at all the strong, beautiful, Trump-supporting women, and look at so many of the other beautiful, strong, intelligent women that are on our side. People like NRA spokeswoman Dana Lausch, Tomi Lahren, the blonde in the belly of the Beast Girl. I mean, we have the most beautiful women on our team. And now look at the loudest liberal activists, people like Rosie O'Donnell. And I don't want to slam women because of the way they look, but we're winning the battle. We have all the beautiful, strong, intelligent women on our side.
Yeah, and I'll just make a comment. Blonde, her real name is Rebecca, which is public knowledge, but she's one of the most wonderful girls I've ever met. Her and Lauren in this political sphere. Of course, I'm friends with many of them, but they really are genuinely wonderful women, and we've become very close friends. So I absolutely second that.
All right. Well, I just wanted to lay that out there as a compliment to all of you strong, beautiful, intelligent women, because you know what? Behind every good man is a great woman. I really firmly believe that. And family is so, so important. And it is just so critical to, when you have children, stay married, get married for the right reasons and then stay married. And I know it's a obvious message that should not need to be said, but so many young people are being fooled into not getting married at all. And I just think it's a sad state of affairs. So let's return to talk about your book. I want to play this clip from our pal, Black Pigeon Speaks. Now, Black Pigeon Speaks happens to be one of my favorite YouTubers out there. I've never spoken to him personally. I think we did have one friendly correspondence once, an exchange via Twitter, if memory serves. But I love this guy, and I always seek out his videos, and I post his latest every single time over at thephaser.com and sometimes at SGT Report. I was looking at his channel, and I came upon this video. It's called The Misogynistic War on Femininity, and I decided to play it. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I'm going to play this for Brittany. Well, he's such a polite, nice guy. It turns out it's a bit of a promotion for your book.
A recent poll taken in 2018 concluded that about half of all women do not consider themselves feminists. While opinions within the halls of academia, as well as in the controlled media, over the past 5 or 6 years as fourth wave feminism has taken hold, well, the opinions and voices expressed have become ever more disconnected with that of your average person, and it would appear with young women in particular. Mostly, they have come to see feminism in its current fourth wave form as being an ideology that is marinated in the politics of the extreme left. At least those are the findings of the recent survey.
I'll pause it there, but boy, is he spot on. Women are waking up to the fact that it is all tied to the far, far, far left ideologies. And so many of those folks are, quote unquote, walking away because they're sick and tired of those ridiculous anti-American, anti-liberty policies. But maybe you can explain this for me. Why does he use the term fourth wave feminism? What is fourth wave feminism?
I'm not sure why he's using that term, because just, like a year ago, everybody was saying third wave feminism. So I'm not sure what they could be referring to there. I suppose maybe it's the most extremist. That would be my first guess, because feminism, it was very interesting. It started out, I remember the first time, it was around 2014, Emma Watson gave a speech. I believe it was at the UN. And she talked about feminism and saying, it's not about man hating, it's about us men and women working together. And she had this he for she hashtag, where men could join as well and support the women. And it seemed like this very just neutral, very open, welcoming thing. And that's when it just blew up and everybody was joining. And I think personally, a lot of women, the vast majority of women, they really just want to be accepted and loved somewhere. They want to be part of a community. They want to be able to relate to people. They don't want to feel isolated and ostracized, which is what's happened to a lot of conservative women. And that's why I think initially maybe so many women jumped on the feminism bandwagon, where they were a bit ignorant to what it was really standing for, at least at the core, the people who were promoting it, the women who were just man haters. And so that's why it was so large. But you see, there's been a decrease, a massive decrease. Many women just walking away, leaving feminism because they're realizing, okay, this is not how it was pitched to us. This is not in reality what it is. So it's gotten much smaller and a lot more extreme. And the mainstream still promotes it, highlights these people, and always gives them, the microphone, but still it's not doing much good. And a lot of women are rejecting it now and saying, no, we're not that stupid, because you see so many countless examples of just their idiocy on display, particularly with this recent Kavanaugh case. It was an absolute disgrace. So I'm not sure, it's something very new. I guess I'll have to look into it more. I'll ask him that myself, and I'll get back to you on that for what it exactly means, because just very recently everybody was calling it third wave. So
okay, well, he's probably identified just the newest iteration of this insanity, which is...
Maybe it relates to me too.
Yeah, maybe. Well, here's the thing. I see a common theme among these New World Order anti-human globalists, people like Macron, people like Merkel. They don't have children. Isn't that an interesting thing? It's easy to sell your soul, I guess, and sell out your people and sell out the future of humanity when you don't have children. Having children very much changes the way you see your world, your place in the world, and the future, So I think having children is what allows people to at least have an inside glimpse at what God's love is. God's love is all-encompassing. God's love is endless. And when you have children of your own, you're able to see just a little bit of that.
Absolutely. It's a mirror of that love, because God created us and then we procreate. So that's really what real love is. So I think you put that perfectly.
All righty. Well, I think at the end of the day, guys, one of the takeaways from this thing is that, as my last guest, Wayne Jett, explained, the plan of these people has been evil for centuries.
They spelled out in detail how they were going to do it. The shadow government, a network of central banks, a graduated income tax, tax-exempt foundations, to be able to shelter their own wealth from taxation. The taxation they were going to put against earnings, earned income, the mark of the middle class. They spelled all of these things out. They spelled out how they would need to poison the people they didn't want, the people of the abyss.
Their plan is evil. Look no further than that wonderful, some consider it one of the best movies ever made, and it was made in the early 1900s, Metropolis by Fritz Lang. Mm-hmm. Just look at the messages in that movie, folks. I'll play a clip right here. What they want is a dutiful, dumbed down, androgynous population that doesn't procreate and is happy to be slaves. That's exactly what they want, and it's been their plan for decades. What they don't want is an awake, alive, informed Christian population that procreates and loves family. That's the enemy to the New World Order. And I would suggest that any of y'all out there, if you have a daughter, if you have a granddaughter, if you have a sister, perhaps you'd want to buy the book, What Makes Us Girls by Brittany Pettibone. Britt, how do they get it?
They can get it. Actually, it's going to be available. It's available now on Amazon in every country. Certain countries are taking a bit longer to process, like Amazon India, but it's on all the main ones like Australia, Canada, US, UK, everywhere. Just a quick note about Amazon US. Right now they're saying that the book will, if you order a paperback or hardcover, it'll take 1 to 3 months to ship. That's not true. When you go to checkout, it's like it has the standard 2-day shipping. They just do that for a lot of books during the Christmas period because it's so hectic and there are so many delays. But you will get it quickly, and people have already received their books. I also have signed copies, hardcover and paperback, available via my website, which you can order with free shipping anywhere in the world.
Well, let's do that, because you know what? I'm a little sick and tired of Bezos and his politics. He bought Washington Post, which did a hit piece on me recently, and on alternative media. He's worth more than $100 billion. He's eating the lunch of mom and pop privately owned stores all across the country, and that's the New World Order plan. So I'm happy if people buy your book, but I'm even happier if they buy it from your site. So explain how they do that.
Yes, so I will leave the link with you, Sean. They could just go to my website. They can add it to the cart. I have a shopping cart there, and you can pay through Stripe with a credit card or PayPal, whichever. And then I will mail the book to you personally and sign it with a message. You can leave a note about a particular type of message you'd like. Otherwise, I can just be creative and do it myself. So yes, that's essentially how you do it. It's pretty easy. And yeah, as I said, free shipping anywhere in the world.
Perfect. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Brittany, thank you so much for your time. I very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was such a pleasure speaking with you again, Sean. It always is.
Believe me, the pleasure's all mine. Guys, thanks again for all your support. Honestly, it just really moves me and makes me feel wonderful every time I have on an author who is on our side, who's on the side of truth. Whenever good things are bestowed upon them because of you, my gracious and generous audience, it really, really makes me feel great. It's how we all pay it forward, I think, by supporting each other. So thank you so very much. I value you guys, love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. And for real news 24/7, visit us at sgtreport.com. God bless.
They are the power elite. They spelled out in detail how they were going to do it. The shadow government, a network of central banks, a graduated income tax, tax-exempt foundations to be able to shelter their own wealth from taxation. They spelled all of these things out. They spelled out how they would need to poison the people they didn't want.